The trade outpost was never truly silent. Even in the deep hours of its artificial night, when the overhead lights dimmed and the corridors emptied, the station still hummed with the quiet rhythm of life support machines and distant engines. Most humans found the sound comforting. To Dr. Elias Ward, it often felt like the heartbeat of something vast and half asleep, something that could stir at any moment. Elias walked the narrow streets of the outer market, his boots echoing against steel floors worn down by 1,000 alien feet. He should have been asleep. Tomorrow's patients, miners with burns, traders with infections, children with fractured bones, would need him clear-headed. Yet he found himself restless. The stars beyond the docking bays seemed too sharp tonight, too close. As if watching, that was when he heard it. A sound, thin, trembling. At first he thought it was machinery straining somewhere in the walls, but then it came again, longer this time. A cry, not mechanical, not human. He slowed his steps. The market stalls around him were shuttered, their owners asleep. The sound came from an alley that cut between two storage blocks, a space shrouded in shadow where the outpost's dim lights failed to reach. Elias felt his throat tighten. He wasn't the kind of man who enjoyed dark places, not since his early years on Earth where crime lurked in corners like this. Yet the cry came again, weaker this time. Something alive, something suffering. He hesitated only a second before moving forward. The alley stank of old fuel and damp insulation. Pipes hissed overhead. A broken lamp flickered once and died, leaving him with only the faint glow of his wrist screen. He raised it higher, the pale light pushing back just enough darkness to see movement. There, curled against a wall, was a shape no larger than a child, trembling with each shallow breath. At first glance it looked like some animal abandoned by its owner, but as Elias knelt, he realized it was unlike anything he'd studied. Its body was thin, ribs showing beneath leathery skin marked with swirling lines that seemed almost to glow faintly, as if inked with starlight. Its head was lowered, its limbs drawn close, but the eyes, they caught the light of his wrist screen and shone like clouded crystals. Not clear, not blind in the human sense either. They seemed fogged, as if a layer of frost covered them, pulsing faintly with dim light. The creature whimpered. Elias's instincts, sharpened by years of medicine, surged to the surface. This thing wasn't dangerous. It wasn't attacking, wasn't snarling. It was weak. Dying, maybe. Slowly he crouched lower, speaking in a soft voice, though he knew it wouldn't understand. Easy there. You're hurt. Let me see. The creature flinched as his hand neared, but it lacked the strength to move away. He touched its thin arm and felt the faintest tremor of warmth, a rapid pulse beneath fragile skin. Alive, yes, barely. He slipped his satchel from his shoulder and pulled a scanner free. The readout danced with symbols. Oxygen levels collapsing. Nervous system erratic. Energy traces unlike anything human biology had ever recorded. And yet, as Elias studied the creature, a strange feeling crept over him. The markings on its body weren't random. They curved like constellations, like maps of stars, and the eyes, though clouded, still glowed faintly, as if something inside the creature wanted to see, wanted to burn. He whispered, "What are you?" The creature whimpered again, lifting its head just enough that its gaze seemed to meet his. Elias knew it couldn't truly see him, but the moment still froze him. A chill slid down his spine, the kind of instinctive warning the body gives when danger hides nearby, and then he felt it. Pressure. Not physical, not sound. A presence. Someone was watching. He glanced behind him. The alley was empty, shadows deep and unmoving. Yet the feeling persisted, prickling at the back of his neck, as if invisible eyes studied not just him, but the creature at his feet. The logical choice was to walk away, to leave it. This was alien space. Strange animals weren't his problem. If the thing belonged to someone powerful, interfering could mean trouble he couldn't afford. But he was a doctor, and doctors did not abandon the dying. Elias slid his arms beneath the frail body, surprised at how light it felt, as if it were made of paper and air. The creature twitched weakly but didn't resist. Its skin radiated a faint warmth, almost humming against his chest, and for a heartbeat Elias swore he saw sparks of light ripple along its markings. He moved quickly, forcing himself not to look over his shoulder, even though every nerve screamed that something or someone stood just beyond sight. Out of the alley, across the quiet market, back toward his small clinic near the docking bay. The creature's shallow breaths brushed against his coat. Its glowing eyes flickered open once more, staring not at him but past him into the distance. Elias followed that gaze out of reflex, toward the star-pierced black beyond the station's hull, and in that instant he thought he saw a shadow shift among the stars. A ship, vast and silent, moving where no ship should be, watching. Then the vision was gone. Perhaps only a trick of his exhausted mind. Yet the feeling of being followed grew stronger with each step, until he finally reached the safety of his clinic. The doors slid shut, sealing out the quiet market. Elias laid the creature on the exam bed, adjusting instruments with trembling fingers. The thing's breathing was shallow, its body limp. He knew he had hours, maybe less, before it faded. He looked down at it. The markings glowed faintly in rhythm with its heart. The eyes remained closed, fogged but alive. Something in him whispered that this was no ordinary patient, no ordinary animal. This was something rare, something important, and whoever had been watching in the dark, whoever had let it end up like this, would not simply forget it. Elias exhaled slowly, his decision hardening like stone. He would heal it. He would heal it in secret, and by doing so he would step into a story far larger than anything he had ever imagined. The clinic was quiet, its walls lined with equipment scavenged from half a dozen worlds. Dr. Elias Ward had made a career out here by being the doctor who never asked too many questions. Miners, smugglers, even the occasional soldier would stagger into his care, and Elias would fix them with whatever tools he had. But now, under the dim glow of his lamps, he faced something he could barely classify as a patient. The alien creature lay motionless on the exam bed. Its chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm, each breath a battle. The markings along its skin flickered like dying embers, fading whenever its pulse weakened. Elias ran his scanner over the frail body again, frustration knotting his brow. The device registered things it wasn't designed to read: spikes of energy, bursts of unknown particles, and nervous system patterns unlike any mammal or reptile he had studied. "This isn't supposed to exist," he muttered. Still, the basics were clear enough. Low oxygen saturation, rapid heartbeat, collapsing organs. Fear if he didn't intervene, the creature wouldn't last the night. He pulled a respirator from the cabinet, adjusting it carefully to fit the narrow face. The creature stirred weakly at the touch, a soft whimper escaping its throat. Elias whispered, "Easy, you're safe here." The respirator hissed to life. Oxygen levels rose. The creature's trembling slowed. For a brief moment, Elias allowed himself to hope. Then the lights flickered. The overhead lamp dimmed, flared, and steadied. His scanner glitched, static crawling across the display. Elias frowned. He hadn't touched anything. The systems weren't failing, they were reacting. He looked at the patient. Its clouded eyes fluttered open, faint light shimmering in their depths. The glow spread outward through its markings, casting strange patterns on the clinic walls. The respirator sputtered, as if drowning in invisible interference. "All right," Elias whispered, forcing calm. "So you're more than just flesh and blood." He adjusted the settings, improvising. Human medicine wasn't meant for this, but healing was often guesswork. He began treating the damaged tissues with regenerative sprays, carefully injecting nutrients to stabilize its blood. If the glowing fluid that pulsed in its veins could even be called blood. Hours passed. Elias lost himself in the work. Each time he thought he was making progress, the readings shifted, forcing him to adapt. He applied cooling gels to reduce organ stress, then shifted to warmth when the body's strange metabolism resisted. He had to trust instinct more than training, and all the while he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not by cameras or hidden eyes in the station, but by the creature itself. Even unconscious, it seemed aware of him. Its glowing eyes would half open, cloudy yet focused, as if trying to understand who this human was. By the third hour, exhaustion clawed at Elias. He leaned against the bed, scrubbing a hand across his face. "What am I doing? If anyone finds out I'm keeping you here, I'm finished." As if in response, the creature's paw or hand, it was difficult to tell, shifted weakly, brushing against his sleeve. Elias froze. It wasn't random. The touch lingered, soft and deliberate. He swallowed hard. "You understand me, don't you?" The creature made no sound, but its markings flared brighter for a moment, casting the room in pale starlight. Elias's chest tightened. Whatever this was, it wasn't mere animal instinct. He resumed his work with renewed focus, patching torn tissues, repairing vascular collapse, cleansing what toxins his scanner identified. By the 6th hour, the breathing stabilized. The pulse slowed to something almost normal. Morning came slowly on the outpost, its artificial lights brightening in careful stages to mimic the rise of a sun that didn't exist. The marketplace stirred to life with clattering shutters and the calls of traders hawking wares. Spices, machine parts, weapons, and alien trinkets filled the air with smells both sharp and sweet. Dr. Elias Ward moved through the crowd, trying to act normal. He had left the creature in his clinic, resting under layers of shielding and monitoring devices. Its breathing was steady now, but Elias knew recovery would take time. He needed supplies, nutrients, stabilizers, anything that could support a metabolism unlike human biology. But as he passed stalls, he noticed the shift in the crowd. Traders leaned closer than usual. Conversation stopped when he approached. He caught words spoken in hushed tones. The human doctor, hiding something strange, eyes glowing like stars. Elias kept his expression neutral, but his pulse quickened. Word had spread faster than he expected. At a stall piled with crystalline fruits, the vendor leaned in and lowered his voice. "Doctor, you should be careful. Some men were asking about you last night. Off-worlders, not traders. They want to know what you've been keeping." Elias forced a smile, handing over credits. "You know how rumors grow. Someone sees a patient and tells a story." The vendor shook his head. "These weren't men looking for gossip. They were hunters. The word stuck in Elias's chest like ice. He thanked the vendor and moved on, his eyes scanning the crowd. He spotted them before long, 3 figures standing too still at the edge of the market, their eyes hidden by dark visors, armor plates glinting beneath cloaks. They didn't browse, didn't barter. They watched. Elias turned down another street, quickening his pace. His clinic was only minutes away, but at every corner he caught whispers. They say the creature is dangerous, worth more than a starship, belongs to someone powerful. If the human has it, he won't live long. By the time he reached his clinic door, his nerves were raw. He slipped inside and sealed it behind him, leaning against the metal as his breath steadied. The creature was still where he had left it, curled beneath a blanket. Its markings pulsed faintly, like constellations across its skin. As Elias approached, the glowing eyes opened halfway, fixing on him. He sat beside the bed, running a hand through his hair. "They know about you." "I don't know how, but they know." The creature blinked slowly, as if it understood. Elias hesitated, then whispered, "Who are you, really?" The only answer was silence, and the faint hum of power that filled the room whenever those glowing eyes were open. Outside, boots thudded against metal walkways. Voices barked in alien tongues. Ships were arriving more than usual. The outpost was no longer just a place of trade. It was becoming a hunting ground, and at the center of it all was a human doctor and the fragile, glowing being he had sworn to save. The outpost changed overnight. Where once there had been noise and laughter, now there was tension. New ships crowded the docking bays, sleek, dark vessels that did not carry trade goods. Soldiers disembarked in precise lines. Envoys in flowing robes moved quickly through the streets, their eyes scanning every face. Dr. Elias Ward watched from the small viewport of his clinic, his stomach tight. He had lived on the outpost for years, but he had never seen so many foreign banners in one place. These were not merchants. These were seekers. Hunters cloaked in the guise of officials. They went door to door, their questions sharp. "Have you seen a creature? Small glowing marked with stars? Report at once. For your safety, safety." The word carried the weight of a threat. Inside the clinic, the creature stirred. Its eyes opened halfway, the glow spilling into the dim room. Elias rushed to cover it with a heavy blanket, whispering urgently, "Stay quiet, please." The creature gave a soft sound, almost like a sigh, then curled smaller beneath the cloth. The day wore on. From outside came the hiss of surveillance drones. Their red eyes scanned walls, peering into shadows. Several times they hovered near his door. Elias froze each time, pressing his back against the clinic wall until the hum faded. By evening, the pressure grew worse. A loudspeaker blared across the station in 3 languages. "The sacred companion of the Zorith Empire has been stolen. Anyone hiding it will be punished. Anyone who returns it will be rewarded beyond measure. Sacred companion. Elias felt the blood drain from his face. This was no pet. This was something tied to one of the most feared empires in the quadrant. He returned to the creature, kneeling beside it. "What are you doing here? Why were you alone?" The glowing eyes opened fully this time, brighter than before. For a heartbeat, Elias thought he saw shapes in them. Constellations, swirling galaxies reflected in the fog. A chill swept through him. This being was more than alive. It was connected to something vast. That night, sleep was impossible. Outside his door, armored boots marched back and forth. Distant voices barked orders. The search was tightening, and then thunder. Not from the skies, but from engines so large they shook the station. Elias rushed to the viewport and froze. A ship hung above the outpost, blotting out the stars. It was colossal, its hull black as obsidian, glowing with faint runes. Smaller vessels circled it like insects around a predator. The Zorith Emperor himself had arrived. Elias's breath caught. He turned back toward the bed where the creature lay, glowing faintly even beneath its blanket. He whispered in disbelief, "You belong to him." For the first time since arriving at the outpost, Elias wished he had walked away in that alley. Yet it was far too late. The hunters were here. The Emperor was here, and the creature had chosen to stay with him. The outpost had never been so tense. By the fifth night, extra ships crowded the docking rings, and more strangers filled the streets. Elias barely slept. He spent his hours tending the creature, checking its pulse, watching the strange light that flowed beneath its skin. The pet was no longer weak. Its eyes, once clouded, now shone like twin stars, sharp and aware. It followed Elias's movements, sometimes even mimicking them, tilting its head when he did, curling its fingers in a way almost human. But what disturbed Elias most was its silence. It had not made a single sound since its healing began. No cries, no growls, not even breath beyond the steady rise and fall of its chest. The quiet was unnatural, almost deliberate. Then one evening the silence broke. A deep tone filled the air, a resonance so low Elias felt it in his bones. The walls of the clinic vibrated. The pet's eyes glowed brighter, and its markings flared like a constellation in motion. Elias stumbled back. "What are you doing?" The creature did not move, yet the resonance spread beyond the clinic. Outside, voices shouted in alarm. Boots stampeded. And then, silence replaced by a single commanding presence. The clinic door slid open without a knock. A figure entered, tall and robed in layered silver and black. The air itself seemed to bend around them, heavy with unseen gravity. Their face was hidden beneath a hood, but their voice carried with absolute authority. "You have what is mine." Elias's heart pounded. He stepped protectively between the stranger and the creature. It was dying. "I saved it. If it belongs to anyone, it belongs to itself now." The hooded figure raised a hand, and the creature behind Elias stirred. Its glowing eyes locked on the newcomer, and for the first time Elias heard it speak. One word. One name, Master. Elias froze. The voice was soft, but layered with power far older than the fragile body it came from. The creature lowered its head, not in fear, but in reverence. The hooded figure lowered their hood, revealing a face both alien and regal, skin like obsidian streaked with faint lines of silver light, eyes burning with a controlled fire. "I am Venar, sovereign of the stellar dominion," the figure said. "You have healed what others could not even touch. You may not understand the weight of what you hold." Elias struggled to speak. It's your pet?" Venar's lips curved in something between pride and warning. "Not a pet. An heir, the last of my bloodline. You touched destiny when you touched its eyes. The creature? No." The heir lifted its glowing gaze toward Elias, as if caught between two worlds, and in that moment, Elias understood. This was no simple act of kindness. He had stepped into a storm that stretched across empires. Hunters, whispers, ships in orbit. They weren't after a rare animal. They were after the throne itself. The word dominion echoed in Elias's mind like a warning bell. Outside, the hum of engines thickened. Ships were circling closer, their shadows crawling over the outpost like predators. Venar stood calm as though the storm belonged to him. The air stayed close, glowing eyes fixed on Elias with something almost like trust. Elias's voice shook. "If you're its master, then what are the hunters after?" Vaynar's gaze hardened. Us? The Dominion is vast, but power invites challengers. They believe the heir weak, vulnerable. And you, human. You became the key when you healed what they could not. Before Elias could answer, the clinic shook with an explosion. Dust rained from the ceiling. Shouts rang from the street. Vaynar's hand swept through the air, and a shimmering field of light snapped into place around the room. They've begun. The siege. Elias rushed to the window. Fire lit the marketplace. Traders scattered as armored figures stormed through, weapons raised, searching. The hunters had multiplied. Dozens now, their cloaks stripped away to reveal gleaming exosuits. The clinic door rattled as fists pounded against it. "Open!" a guttural voice barked. "Surrender the creature, human, and you may live." Elias's stomach twisted. His hands clenched into fists. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a fighter. He was a doctor. But the thought of handing over the fragile being he had nursed back from death, it was unthinkable. The air stood now, its small body trembling but steady. Light poured from its markings, filling the clinic with an otherworldly glow. Its voice, soft yet commanding, whispered, "Elias, choose." The pounding grew louder. The door was seconds from breaking. Elias turned to Vaynar. "If I help you, we'll all die. If I hand it over, it dies anyway. Tell me, what can I do?" Vaynar's eyes burned brighter. "You already did the impossible, human. You healed the air. Now you must keep it alive long enough for destiny to awaken." The door cracked. Metal screamed. A hunter's arm forced through, claws reaching. Elias grabbed the only weapon in the clinic, a surgical laser, and fired. The beam sliced across the hunter's gauntlet, forcing it back. The door shuddered again. Outside, war had come to the outpost. Inside, Elias stood in the crossfire of empires, his choice binding not only his fate, but the fate of a throne. The clinic door burst inward with a deafening crash. Hunters stormed through the smoke, their armored boots pounding against the floor, visors glowing like predators in the dark. Elias barely had time to react. He fired the surgical laser again, searing a line across the first intruder's chest plate. It staggered but did not fall. Another hunter raised a weapon, its barrel humming with lethal energy. "Down!" Vaynar roared, sweeping his hand through the air. A shield of blinding light erupted, deflecting the shot. Sparks rained as energy splashed against the barrier. The air stood between them, its small frame trembling but unyielding. Its markings flared brighter than ever before, painting the room in waves of silver and blue. The glow pushed against the walls, filling the air with a rising hum. Elias felt the hairs on his arms lift. "What's happening?" Vaynar's voice shook with awe. "The awakening. You've kept it alive long enough." The hunters pressed forward, their blades and rifles slamming against the shield. Each impact cracked the air like thunder. Elias backed toward the air, fear clawing at his chest. The air raised its hand. Its eyes, once soft, fragile, now burned with a star's fury. "Enough," it whispered. The word detonated like a sunflare. Every machine in the clinic shorted out. Consoles burst in showers of sparks. The hunters froze, their exosuits flickering with failure, power cores whining before shutting down. One by one, their weapons fell silent, clattering uselessly to the floor. Then the true wave came. A pulse of light surged from the air's body, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. The hunters were hurled back through the shattered doorway, their armor crushed as though by invisible hands. The ground itself trembled. Outside, ships hanging in orbit spun, their engines sputtering under the same unseen force. Elias shielded his eyes, heart hammering. You're not a pet. You're not even just an heir." The air turned its gaze on him. For a moment, it was no longer a childlike creature, but something vast, an ancient will contained in fragile form. Its voice carried through the shaking air. "I am the return of a dynasty. The Dominion does not end. It begins anew." Vaynar dropped to one knee, head bowed in reverence. "The throne is yours, my sovereign." The light dimmed. Slowly, the air sagged, collapsing into Elias's arms. It looked up at him with eyes once more soft, once more small. "Thank you," it whispered before drifting into unconsciousness. Silence fell across the wrecked clinic. Outside, the hunters lay broken. The marketplace was scorched but alive. Ships in orbit drifted powerless, their siege undone in a single breath. Elias sank to the floor, cradling the fragile body. His mind reeled, his hands shaking. He had wanted only to save a life, and instead he had reignited an empire. Vaynar rose, his expression unreadable. The galaxy will come for this place. For us, for you, healer of the impossible. The story has already begun. Elias looked at the air, then at the ruined door where enemies once stood. He whispered, "What have I done?" Far above, the stars themselves seemed to shift, as though the universe were listening. And in the silence, the future waited, bright, terrible, and inevitable,